Hello viewer, welcome to my extremely long gap session about my favorite OC, Hector Wong, and his backstory before the main plot and his mindset, mental issues, and then also a very long speed paint of my drawings of him in the background. So yeah, enjoy your watching time, and if you watch the whole thing, I love you, please remember me. By the way, this is written in Hector's kind of perspective on life and the world, so yeah. Hector Wong was born to his mother, who was married off to his father, Mr. Wong, a wealthy chief executive officer. He had a very good reputation, and his firstborn son was very impressive and smart. His secondborn, his daughter, was witty and very pretty. She had gotten engaged early on. Hector had got to witness that. Hector, however, was not like either of his older siblings. He was very stupid. Well, he wasn't so stupid, but it was that he was no genius and didn't live up to his father's expectations. His father was always disappointed in him. Hector knew that. Hector, though, desperately craved his father's attention. His father hadn't paid him any attention, and his siblings were off on their own, trying to be successful and gain their father's favor themselves. His mother, too, didn't seem to love him. She hadn't wanted him anyway. She didn't want her marriage nor her pregnancy. Hector really wanted his father to pay attention to him. He lacked that human connection in his life, and he held his father on a pedestal. He was taught from a young age that his father had the greatest power in his life and told him what to do, gave him direction at least. His father also was really all he knew. Since he was no genius and no daughter that could be sold off, and he was stupid and wasn't talented at anything, he had no use. But he wanted his father's attention, and his father didn't want to give it to him, so he resorted to causing trouble. From early on, he became quite the troublemaker, though he never really directly hurt anybody, at least not intentionally. That changed, however, when he moved to a new school in the 3rd grade. Before that, he was in a private school, but his father had realized that it would be wasted on someone like him, who had no talents, no smarts, and was just somebody who didn't deserve it. So in the 3rd grade, he moved on to a public school. There, he discovered a new form of expression that was labeled bullying. It was perfect. It caused enough trouble and hurt people and made him feel good about himself. It was an outlet for his rage, distress, a personal diary, and he could even get attention from his father when he was found out. His first victim, the first he'd ever picked on, was a meek boy in his class. He had cyan hair and was quiet and shy. He seemed lonely and was easy to pick on, though that wasn't the first thing Hector thought when he had initially met him. At first, Hector thought the cyan-haired boy was interesting and tried to say hi. He was quite intrigued by the boy, actually. He didn't look anything like anyone he'd seen before. A very unique look he had. Hector really wanted to be friends with him, but the other boy wasn't like that. He was silent. Hector didn't even know if he was shy. Sometimes it was like he didn't want to talk to anybody. The boy was in his own world, and Hector tried to reach out to him. Honestly, despite not ever getting much response, Hector didn't really mind him. But he wanted someone to talk to, and the cyan-haired boy wasn't that. So Hector moved on to another group, one of kids, mainly boys, who liked picking on other people. Hector joined them easily. They loved him. He was bold and did whatever he wanted because he knew he wouldn't get into trouble, or that much trouble at least. Though if he did get into trouble, he knew that was all the better because at least then his father would pay some fragment of attention to him, and it didn't matter to Hector what kind of attention that was. He hungered for the thought so badly that he really did anything he pleased if to get it. He even quite enjoyed bullying other kids. It made him feel good and all eyes were on him. The kids loved him for it, at least the ones he hung around did. Hector bullied the cyan-haired boy very badly as his primary and first target. Badly was an overstatement to him as a child, though, and he didn't quite understand why someone wouldn't like it, all the attention you get during it. And as long as the kid wasn't dead, Hector didn't see the problem. He continued to harass and bully the kid through his 3rd grade, until one day he took it too far, by everyone's standards. Hector had a pair of scissors with which he cut the cyan-haired boy across the face. It was a rough cut by the dull scissors that drew from his cheek across the child's mouth and down to his chin. It left a bloody wound, with the cut on either end more shallow than closer to the center of the wound. The adults acted as if he had just killed someone, talking about how it would leave a terrible scar. Hector didn't see the problem with that, though. Honestly, he was a shameless boy who lacked a certain bit of empathy and didn't see what was so wrong. Well, he tried not to. After that, everyone avoided him, parting like the Red Sea when he walked into the school. Following a couple days of parent meetings and serious discussion, as well as some outcasting for Hector, he was decisively expelled. Since then, Hector had never forgotten him, that cyan-haired boy. But besides that, Hector moved on to another school after being expelled for the first time, a good talking to by his father, and days of punishment and reflection. Hector didn't quite mind. At the new school, he had to find new friends. For him, it wasn't that hard. He was a sociable boy with a strong personality as well. He forced himself to be one. It was also because he was rich that people wanted to hang out with him. As life went on, Hector grew into a teen, but not quite mentally. He continued with his bullying antics, hopping from school to school, stealing, humiliating, and hurting his selected targets. He had many victims, as well as many friends he'd made between the schools, which he'd often gotten expelled from. It was the same as always when he entered high school. It was his 9th grade, and he hadn't bothered to even try to change his ways. He didn't mind how he was, though many did, but most of all, he didn't want to change. He didn't think he could. He knew he was an idiot, and he thought he couldn't fix that, so even in high school he continued on. This time, many people from his last school came to the same high school, so he didn't have to start from scratch. He had his friends, victims, and a sense of security. However, his father had since grown fed up with him and wondered when he was going to change, grow up. He couldn't continue to tarnish his reputation further, and so he decided to give Hector some much-needed discipline. Hector had no idea what was coming upon being called into his father's frowsty and pungent office. He thought that it would be the same lecture as always, to which he could zone out to and then be on his way. A scolding, maybe an expulsion, or perhaps his father finally wanted to see him. But he didn't expect it was news of him being sent off to what was a questionably legal rehabilitation camp. He would have to spend more than half of the school year and half of his summer break there. It was brutal in that place. They wouldn't hesitate to inflict harm onto the students if for discipline, and Hector's father paid good money for it, knowing very well what kind of place it was. Hector didn't, however, and initially tried to conduct himself as always, misbehave, cause trouble, pick on some of the weak, but he'd soon realize it wasn't worth it. The education and rehabilitation camp was severely traumatizing. They broke Hector in ways he didn't know people could be broken. It somehow forced even him to be docile. To him, it wasn't a good thing. And so, after half a year, he left the place, with a blank look in his eyes. It looked as if he had no more passion, no more boldness, and no more discord left to come out from within him. Deep inside, he wasn't ready to accept what they told him. He walked out an empty shell. His father saw it as better that way, shaking hands with the director and making various proposals over small talk. Over the rest of the summer, Hector remained just as docile. He didn't misbehave and merely hold himself up in his room. He didn't eat too much, and nobody paid enough attention to him to realize he was paranoid. Following that, he continued to not interact with anybody. His father noticed he actually wasn't causing trouble, and decided it was finally time to send Hector to a more sophisticated education, private school once again. The academy was one that both his elder brother and father had attended before him. It was filled with kids from reputable families, children of businessmen, politicians, entrepreneurs, people who could pay the price of the academy. Though there were some who went into debt just to get their child in, the reason being the education would be far better than anything their child could receive in public school. In the first few weeks, Hector behaved vastly different from how he usually did at school. Quiet, docile, just like how the rehabilitation camp wanted him to be. Hector didn't like that. The camp broke him, but he didn't know how to cope, and so he remained empty for a short while. He was falling apart. He didn't know what to do with his emotions. They remained hovering, festering, and tearing him apart from the inside while he lay his head low at the academy. In class, he seemed to be in a daze. He zoned out often and didn't seem nor feel grounded. People didn't mess with him because of his large stature, but they weren't attracted to him either. He couldn't keep doing this. He had to hurt somebody. It was part of who he was. Otherwise, where in the world would his feelings go? Not once had someone taught Hector the right way to cope, manage his emotions, and not once had someone thought to. If only he didn't have to learn it himself. The only outlet he knew was violence, and so once again he joined a group of delinquents. This group, however, was on a whole other level as compared to the kind he was familiar with, completely overshadowing the bullies roaming public schools. Their practices were far more brutal. They were the real deal, involved with actual gangs and criminal syndicates. They had money and status, and so they could do whatever they wanted. They would target the students who were poor and desperate, extorting them for money and treating them as shuttles. They had the power to strip them of everything, and they had before. It was twisted, and what Hector needed to clear his mind. They had heard rumors about Hector before, and welcomed him with open arms. That year of 10th grade, Hector's temperament only grew worse. He was irritable and agitated. It was different from any previous year. He was much too broken. People dared not cross paths with him, as they risked becoming ruined completely. This to him was no longer a game, and no longer for fun. Hector relied on this outlet as a life jacket, keeping him from drowning in his own self-recrimination. Hector was angered easily, infamous, and an object of fear. During this time, it seemed his father wasn't paying any attention to him, maybe unaware of what was going down within the confines of the academy. It seemed he had grown used to Hector's temporarily passive nature, but all Hector needed was one final straw before it all came crumbling down on him. His mind was fragile, though no one could tell. Past his 10th year and on to his 11th, Hector had never become less angry. It was the point even his friends were wary. Hector's group continued to terrorize the school, targeting the innocent, although their parents' innocence is questionable. Extorting money and dealing drugs, they made many enemies. Things, though, eventually changed. Closer to the end of the 11th grade, Hector was the same as usual, if not worse. His friends, however, decided to tone it down a bit. They came to realize their foolishness. The people studying here at this prestigious school were destined to become famous politicians, businessmen, and high-class individuals. They'd made many an enemy of people who could potentially become tigers and bite back twice as hard as they came on. It was dangerous for their future. The people who they looked down on were climbing up the ranks and gaining wealth and reputation. Who knows what might happen with those who seek revenge? They realized they couldn't keep living like this. They would be left behind when everyone else succeeds in their futures. They needed to change. Their warnings flew straight over Hector's head, though, and soon as they started focusing on their futures, Hector was left behind in their wake. Hector didn't want to accept it, any of it. In the beginning, he tried a little bit, but could he ever compete with these people who were smart, geniuses, and who had proud fathers? How could he? It wasn't his place in the world. Left behind by his friends, Hector continued doing as he always did, alone this time. He beat people to the ground, not realizing he was grieving, not realizing he didn't want to be left behind. He had the option to join other delinquent groups in the school, but it wouldn't be the same. He thought he didn't want human connection anymore. He just wanted to hate everybody, and everybody to hate him. He had no one left to not hate him. His friends had moved on from this childishness, and he had no good reputation. He decided he would hate the world back. He crushed anyone in his way and didn't look back. When 11th grade drew its conclusion, his father greeted him home with disappointment. It was nothing new. Hector had gone back to his main house for the summer vacation. There, he started to feel the gap between the rest of the world and him. His older brother was succeeding in his education, looking like a good heir to the company, and his sister was working on investments, interested in up-and-coming brands. Even his younger brother was actually a generational genius, having skipped multiple grades and already passing 12th grade curriculum at 13. Hector realized hard and clear. He was just a delinquent. He was nothing compared to the rest of his family. He had no worth and would leave no legacy. His father didn't even look at him. Maybe his father had known what he had been up to at private school, but he had just given up on him. His friends weren't the only things that had left him behind. Hector hated himself, he realized. He pretended not to feel it before. He pretended he was better than others. He was never superior, never better. He'd channeled his inferiority and taken it out on people who were succeeding, outpacing him in life. Even the people who he thought were the same as him were actually far above his level. They're ready for their futures, to make somebody proud. Those 2 months of summer went by very slowly. Once again, Hector hid within his room, stayed in his place. Not even drugs could help him. In fact, they made him feel even worse than before. During that period, Hector cried. He cried for the first time in a while. He didn't want to make his father ashamed anymore. He didn't want to be hated by the world, and he didn't hate the world either. He'd wished ever so dearly that someone could have shown him the way. He'd wished he could have found his own way. He knew he was stupid. He knew he hated himself for it. He always did, and yet he hurt other people by twisting his own feelings into others. Could anyone else be so dastardly? The things he had done to everyone he'd ever harmed, the things he'd done to the cyan-haired boy. Hector finally understood, or let himself understand what the instructors told him at the rehabilitation camp. He was burdensome, selfish and burdensome. Did he think he deserved to be loved? They told him, if you sin, you atone for the rest of your life without ever daring to ask for forgiveness. A sinner and a burden should take responsibility for what they've done by keeping it with them for the rest of their lives to remind themselves of their shame. Forgiveness is a luxury you don't deserve after you've hurt someone. Hector had done more than just that. What did he have to do to atone? His guilt swallowed him whole. His life jacket was stripped off and he drowned in guilt and tears. He realized he didn't deserve oxygen, and his fragile sense of hatred was keeping him barely afloat. He needed to change. Not to redeem himself, but to stop dragging his relations down with him. He didn't aim to be successful or to make his father proud, as that would be far out of his capabilities. But at least he decided not to act as a complete failure. All he could do was just not disappoint his father and become an average student. And so he went back to school. He kept his head low as he did when he first came to the academy, but this time it was different. He had a goal and a purpose. He listened attentively and managed to get slightly above average grades. People dared not mess with him, though he had many enemies who were praying for his downfall. Clutching his fall in his 12th year, Hector graduated. His marks were average, but enough, and he managed to squeeze himself into a good university. It wasn't remarkable, nor did it have any grand reputation. It was fully ordinary and had a pleasant atmosphere. So, without a gap year, Hector attended. He moved from the academy dorms to his universities, specifically asking to have no roommate, although he'd have to pay double the price. He could just afford it though, thanks to the allowance he still got from his family, and extra money from a few part-time jobs. Hector didn't talk with his family, and he didn't try to. His only interactions between family members were his mother's texts every New Year asking, "How are you doing?" The texts weren't special, they had no meaning, yet Hector still found solace in them. Every year since the 10th grade, he'd replied, "Good." They were lies, but as long as his mother thought about him, he was fine. His family weren't connected at all. His mother hated his father, and father showed no compassion towards anyone. There was also conflict between his older and younger brothers over inheritance. His sister had gotten married, though he wasn't invited to the wedding. It wasn't a happy occasion anyway. Although Hector didn't allow himself too much enjoyment, he was still comforted by small, stupid things. Lavender tea, which disgusted him, but gave him a strange sense of warmth. It was the scent of his father's office every time he was called in for a lecture. He'd always drank it. It emitted a sickening and pungent smell that was exclusively his father's. The drink helped him imagine a world where maybe his father was with him. Hector was still actively haunted by his first victim, the boy of whom he couldn't remember by name, only by the nicknames he used to call him. He was a pretty boy, though Hector had almost ruined that. Hector mused he'd probably be very good-looking by now, assuming he's still around. The guilt still eats him alive. He can't and won't try to erase the shame. Many of the people he used to bully still come after him, especially those from the academy who had become successful and wealthy. He lived running away from the people trying to exact revenge, which he thought was well-deserved. He'd often been met with groups of shady-looking men upon returning home, robbed, and would barely get out alive. He didn't lack shame enough to fight back. Sometimes he wondered whether that boy also held such a grudge. Ordinary people seemed visibly scared of Hector because of his big frame and delinquent-looking facade. Sometimes his lost temper would slip through. He most required more patience. He didn't bother trying to start anew, though, so that he wouldn't run away from his past, which was an urge he actively tried to avoid. He was stubborn to himself about things like that. And so that's Hector, my depressed child who used to be a terrible person but is now just depressed. If you liked this 17 minutes of just yapping, then maybe you'll enjoy his husband's backstory, which I will make, though I do not know when. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have a good, productive day full of goodness and happiness. Yeah. Also, I'm sorry for the inconsistent audio quality. I do not have a mic.